Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today I want to go over the 6 biggest risks that passive investors make. If you're a passive investor and you're investing and you are receiving income straight to your bank account on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, whatever it is, I can promise you that if you're not paying attention to these 6 risks, you could potentially have a big problem on your hands at one point. I had gotten a call from one of our investors who said that he had a friend and asked if I could help him. Essentially, this friend had lost what I thought was some money on a real estate investment that he had done out in California, investing with somebody that a lot of other people had recommended. So have you ever heard that where a friend and family member says, oh, I recommend this person, they've made me a lot of money, they've done really well. Well, this was that situation. And I said, well, sure, I'm happy to hop on the call. I don't know if I'm going to be of any help, but I'll try to steer him in the right direction. And I hopped on the call with this gentleman and quickly found out that he had lost his entire investment. I think it was around $150,000 with this particular sponsor in California. And after digging into it, I realized that he did not pay attention to one of these 6 risks here. And I'm going to break down and show you exactly what that is. Before we jump into it, if you get value from these episodes, please do me a favor. Leave a review for us. Give us some feedback. Share these episodes with your friends and family. When you leave a review and you share it, it bumps us up in the algorithm and allows us to bring you a lot more fantastic content like this. So please take a second and do that. All right, jumping in. So the first risk that passive investors make is actually investing in the actual sponsor and the deal. That's number one, and that's number 2. Number 1 is the sponsor, the person. You can have the most fantastic deal in the world, and if it's a bad sponsor, then they can completely ruin that deal. I remember that there was a story that I had heard from one of my friends in Nashville. He actually ended up becoming an investor, and he said that he had done some deals with me and had kind of heard through his friends that they had lost money with this. It's a completely separate story from what I was telling earlier. This is a second different investor, second different situation. This was a group of people that he knew that had all lost money with this real estate syndicator in Nashville, Tennessee. And this guy actually got kind of like locally semi-famous for what he did. Apparently, it was a really good deal. It was like a development deal. It was like some office space, like mixed use. And he just did a terrible job of executing on the whole thing. Didn't raise enough funds. The bank ended up taking back a whole slew of issues on it. Didn't hire the right contractor. And that was a great example of how you can have a fantastic deal and then the sponsor can go and ruin it. So it's very important that you make sure you do your homework on the sponsor, make sure they have the experience, spend some time with them, trust your gut, make sure they have a good reputation, preferably. Get on a phone with a few people that have invested with them before, preferably a long time. Make sure you do your research. You can get background checks on them, ask for the information. They should be able to give you this, but make sure you do your homework on the sponsor. The next, number 2, as we already mentioned, is the deal. The deal is also the biggest risk passive investors make. Now, I would argue you can you can have some pretty good sponsors out there, and they might be able to take a bad deal and eventually do something with it if they're good enough, right? But still, doesn't matter if you're Warren Buffett, if you've got a bankrupting situation with a very limited clock on it, there's only so much Warren Buffett's going to be able to do, aside from being able to inject billions of dollars into it. So it's very important that you understand the deal. What is your break-even point? What are the risks with this deal? Is there a clock on the debt financing? What are my obligations as an investor in this deal if things go wrong? So make sure that you analyze the deal thoroughly. The sponsor should be providing this information to you. The next is the area. You could have a fantastic sponsor. You could have a fantastic deal, but what's going on with the area? What are some of those larger economic forces at play here? So, for example, I just hopped off a call yesterday with a friend of mine, and we were talking about what's going on in the office space, especially in these cities like San Francisco and New York. There was literally a $300 million portfolio going on sale in San Francisco in what used to be a booming area in downtown San Francisco. But because of the rampant run-up in crime and the cultural changes, the lifestyle changes that employees were now making working from home as opposed to these office buildings. This was an economic wave that a lot of people did not see coming. And as a result, I personally think there's going to be a lot of foreclosures in the office space industry. Just wait. I think you're going to see a ton of these downtown skyscrapers that used to be office buildings being converted into like high-rise condos. Just wait for it. So understand the area that you're investing in, right? If you were investing in, Detroit back in 2009, 2010, people were just moving out of it in droves. You need to be aware of what's happening with the area before investing in it. So that's the third risk. The fourth is making sure you do not put yourself in a financially burdensome situation by investing, aka have an emergency fund. Do not invest your emergency fund. That's one of the first questions we ask when we do introductory calls is, do you have an emergency fund set aside? Do you have at least 6 months to a year's worth of living expenses for you or whoever you're taking care of set aside? Because that is a huge risk. A lot of alternative investments are not liquid, meaning when you invest in land or you invest in an apartment syndication, it's stuck in that building until it comes out. You're not getting it out. So make sure that you put yourself in a situation where you don't need those funds. That's the fourth. The fifth is documentation. Now, if you've ever been a passive investor in a syndication deal, or you've been a passive investor, maybe doing some private lending on some real estate or something else, understanding the paperwork is extremely important. Not only how the paperwork is constructed, but how it's recorded. I know people who have done promissory notes to investors. I know investors who've done promissory notes on real estate and to people, but then that promissory note never gets recorded at the Registry of Deeds office. And they basically have no securitization. They think they have securitization because they have a piece of paper on their hands, but really that securitization happens because when that piece of real estate goes to get sold, the title company does a title search, find out there's a lien, there's a deed of trust on the property, there's a note that needs to get paid with the investor's contact information on it. When they call, that investor goes, no, this hasn't been paid. I need to get paid. And basically it stops the sale of that property without that promissory note getting paid. But they had no clue that it needed to get recorded. And I'm like, you need to make sure these are getting recorded. That's kind of a red flag that person didn't do that. I've seen people not read paperwork and syndications where they don't understand that if the deal goes bad and there's a capital call means a call to the investors to essentially cough up more money for the deal because things haven't gone according to plan. If you don't do that as a passive investor, as a limited partner in that deal, they can then go raise outside funds to put it into the project, and that dilutes your ownership because they're bringing in more people into the deal. Your shares become diluted, and it's most definitely going to affect your IRR, your internal rate of return, how much money your money is making. So understanding the documentation is very important, and understanding how your capital is securitized to that investment. And then number 6, the final risk to investors that I see them make all the time. If you're a passive investor and you do not understand the tax implications of your investments, this is a huge risk because what you think is going to get you to financial independence may not. Taxes are the biggest burden investors are going to have, basically. So any kind of vehicle, self-directed IRA accounts, 401k accounts, regular IRA accounts, Roth accounts, health savings accounts, SEPAs. There's so many great tax vehicles out there. Do your homework, do your research, understand what the implications are. I had somebody reach out to me one time and he was talking about investing, and he was in Canada, and he wanted to invest. And I said, the one thing you need to be aware of, and again, contact your accountant, because I'm not the best person to speak to about taxes. That's not what I do, but I'm pretty sure that you're probably going to be double taxed. So whatever you make on this, the United States is going to tax and Canada is going to tax. That's going to significantly affect your IRR. So you need to be aware of that. I don't know if he was aware of that or not, but the tax implications are very, very important. All right, guys, that is the 6 biggest risks for passive investors. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you next time.